Kachina will breakdance all over your enemies, and today I'm gonna tell you how to build her best. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. So, what artifacts does this dear child bestowed with the glory of an ancient name desire? None other than 4-piece Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City, but 2-piece helps Kachina regenerate her burst quicker, which helps with triggering the insane 4-piece of this set. Speaking of which, 40% damage bonus. Kachina has Night Soul, so she can trigger it in full. For the record, 40% damage bonus is equal to a Kazuha with 1000 EM, and Kachina can provide that to every character part of the 2 buffed elements within the entire team. Though, because Kachina herself has to react, Geo is always going to be one of the buffed reactions. Some of you may be asking, how can Kachina trigger the passive? It needs a reaction between 2 elements to work, doesn't it? Crystallize is, well, crystallize. Simple. If an enemy has Hydro applied onto them, and you apply Geo over it, blue shards are created, and it counts as a Hydro-related reaction. If you were to do the same for, say, Pyro, then orange shards would be produced, and it would count as a Pyro-related reaction. So that means that Kachina is going to buff the other elemental sub-DPSs in the team by 40% as well, without any need for certain double swirl setups. You know what that means? This makes her an insane Navia support. Navia's partner Geos have either had an innate anti-synergy with her, such as Chiori, didn't apply Geo in a wide enough range, like Zhongli, or provided random useless buffs like Albedo's Burst providing EM for some reason. Kachina provides a 40% damage bonus easily with this, and Kachina C1 also sucks in Crystallized Shards, furthering the case for Kachina being a great Navia support. The wildest thing? You don't even have to level the pieces, nor do the main stats matter. Slap a bunch of level 0 artifacts on a level 1 Kachina, and all you have to do is make sure she has an ER % sans, so she can proc her burst often if you have C2. The rest of her kit is all damage centric, so 4-piece Cinder City is all you really have to slap onto her. It's why Kachina is so strong, as this isn't only good for Navia, but for other high-end units such as Nervalette, and any of her team comp where Geo application does not ruin the core synergy of the team. I'll go more into detail on that in the team section. Plus, if you care about Kachina's own damage, well, the 4-piece buffs all Geos, including herself. So then you can choose to level and build her Cinder City set, which will most likely be transferable to a future Shilonen build if she power creeps Kachina. There is honestly no good reason as to why you would want to run any other kind of supportive set on her. Especially when Cinder City is this good, and can be used with literally 0 resin investment if the buff is all that you're after. I will mention that yes, you can use 4-piece Noblesse, but why would you do this when 40% damage bonus is right at your fingertips? Especially when the attack percent from the 4-piece will do nothing for HP scalers like Nervalette, that Kachina also works really well with. It's a nice placeholder for newer players via the Strongbox until you can get to Natlan and build her on 4-piece Cinder City. I see no real use in using Tenacity over Cinder City or even Noblesse, since at least 2-piece Noblesse benefits Kachina's own damage, because casting Kachina's Burst does some AoE Geo damage which counts as burst damage. The 2-piece of Tenacity does nothing for Kachina, but the 4-piece is easy to keep up with her. The extra shield strength may be good for characters that lose a lot of DPS from staggering, but even somebody like that would rather weaker crystallized shields with 40% damage bonus. What if you care about Kachina's own damage? Well, 4-piece Obsidian Codex can technically work for her, but keep in mind that in order to reap out the excellent effects, Kachina would have to be on field. She can have some field time if you choose to smash her drill into the ground, so it is a doable playstyle, but this is strictly for a DPS-centric Kachina. Avoid this if you're looking to off-field her. 4-piece Golden Troop can help you achieve an off-field sub-DPS build much better. An off-field Kachina is kind of like Fischl, where basically the entire damage output is in the skill. Since when Kachina uses her burst with her C2, the drill that's left behind is her skill construct, and it still counts as skill-based damage. Very nice if you plan to fully off-field her. 4-piece Husk also works too, since Kachina's damaging abilities scale off of def percent, so it'll be pretty nice if you're trying to stack up buffs for your own Geo kid. But 2-piece's 30% def is also really solid. 2-piece mix and match sets for support Kachina include 2-piece Cinder City and 2-piece ER percent. And 2-piece mix and match sets for sub DPS or DPS Kachina will be 2-piece Night Soul percent, Cinder City, Geo percent, def percent, and skill percent. Burst percent works too, but skill percent is better. Main stats are simple. For a support Kachina, go for ER percent, def percent, def percent. You're playing Kachina for the 4-piece Cinder City buff alone, or for Tenacity or Noblesse. You make sure her sounds is ER so that if you have C2, she can have a really long uptime on her Geo construct with her burst, and then build her for tankiness outside of that so that she doesn't die as easily if you choose to keep her at a low level. And she already scales off of def percent, so might as well kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Kachina's ER requirements are actually pretty low. You'll be covered after equipping her with a Favonius Lance, but there is simply no stat that is more efficient to farm for when it comes to building a pure support Kachina. If you care about Kachina's damage on a support build, you can also go for ER percent, Geo percent, crit percent. If your crit stats are good enough, you can swap the crit circlet for a def percent one, and if you have a def percent goblet with amazing substats, you can swap out the Geo goblet for a def percent one, as 4-piece Cinder City will be giving your Kachina an amount of damage bonus percent that is almost equal to a plus 20 elemental goblet. For a damage-based Kachina, go for defense percent, Geo percent, crit percent. You can still build her to be damage-based on 4-piece Cinder City, since it buffs her as well after all, so the same rule applies here with the goblets. Though, note that it isn't as necessary, since she'd be using a def percent Sans in this scenario. As for substance priority, simple. For a support-based Kachina, go for this. You literally do not need anything else. A supportive build only cares about either consistent Cinder City procs, or consistent procs of Noblesse which needs her burst to be up, or Tenacity which benefits from the longer construct uptime. Her burst regenerates her construct with C2, therefore making ER percent the only real substat that you actually want to actively hunt for. And if you're at C0, then having her burst up more often can't hurt at all for more crystallized procs. As for a damage-based Kachina, go for this. Most units, even if they're DPSs, still want enough ER to burst consistently. Kachina is no exception. Make sure to pick up all the other stats she needs as well if you're interested. Bursting off of cooldown is a very important thing for a Kachina of any kind. Definitely don't sleep on building adequate ER on her. So what weapons does this brave first-timer of the Abyss require in order to shine? To preface, I'm only going to be focusing on Kachina's best options. If I don't mention a weapon, then it isn't as good as Kachina's more accessible options. I'm gonna start off with Favonius Lance since it's so good for her role as a team support. Lots of ER for Kachina herself, and team-wide white energy particles so that she can reduce the amount of energy that her teammates have to build. Excellent choice for a more utility-based Kachina. Refinements also really help this fella out. Craftable and free from the web event, Footprint of the Rainbow is a highly accessible def main stat polearm that provides even more def upon the usage of an elemental skill. Fantastic option for anybody who wants their drill kit to deal lots of funny yellow numbers, because it is not only craftable, but literally available in a web event that's ongoing right now. I see no reason to chase other free-to-play options. In terms of 5-star polearms, pretty much any old crit stick weapon would do, bonus points if they provide any benefits to elemental skill damage. Any will work, use what you've got, but the free-to-play craftable is not only more well-tailored to Kachina, but it's also much cheaper to use the free weapon on the free character. No need to go chasing after a 5-star polearm when her 4-star options are perfectly solid and serviceable. Kachina's teams are interesting because she can act as a budget Kazuha replacement in any team in which Geo application does not ruin the team's core main functionality. Kachina is undeniably going to be in her prime form within Navia teams, being a lot better than Navi's previous best in slot Geo partner, Chiori. Kachina actually buffs Navia with Cinder City's 40% free Geo damage bonus, plus she'll happily be able to buff whatever sub DPS you're playing Navia with. Since, after all, Cinder City will always buff 2 elements due to needing a reaction in order to function. So your Farina, Yelan, Xiangling, whoever, is going to be getting a flat 40% increase to their damage bonus, meaning that Kachina compensates for losing Chiori sub DPS by buffing up the team's overall performance. Kachina's C1 also sucks in crystallized shards, making her an even better contender for Navia. No other partner Geo other than Goro with his burst does this as of now. It doesn't matter what Navia team you play, Kachina will always be best in slot as of now, even if you only have her at level 1 on a +0 Cinder City set. Kachina also provides Navia her new strongest free-to-play team, and creates one of the strongest free-to-play carry teams in general. It's also one cost for the speedrunners who care to know. Navia, Kachina, Bennett, Xiangling. Bennett is on current banners, both Xiangling and Kachina are free, and Navia re-ran very recently in 4.8. This team is extremely strong for Navia, even though it's a free-to-play team. Plus, Navia can use the new craftable Not Long Claymore, which, what do you know, is also free from the web event where you don't really have to do anything right now. Kachina has not only upgraded Navia's premium teams a whole ton for zero cost at all, but she's thrown free-to-play as an incredible bone. Yes, Shilonen may very well power creep Kachina, but Shilonen is a 5-star, whereas Kazuha is a permanently free 4-star. Amazing synergy on the whole. I know some people are going to be wondering if Kachina can help Itto. Yes, but you have to swap out a teammate for Bennett so that Kachina can trigger Crystallize reliably. It helps if Bennett is C6 so that Kachina's normals can apply some pyro if there's no aura on the enemy. He'd replace Goro, which is an unfortunate waste if your Goro is C6, but it's the only way to use Kachina with Itto. Her C4 also buffs def %, which is pretty good for the guy. Chiori also benefits from the Drill Kid's Geo construct. You can also opt to switch Chiori out for Goro and run a double buffer Itto team out of Itto, Bennett, Goro, and Kachina. It's not bad either. Nervalette also loves having Kachina in his party. C0 Nervi especially, since her crystallized shards can protect him from interruption. She also provides him with another stack of past Draconic Glories, and can work alongside Kazuha in this team to provide the Hydro Dragon with an impressive amount of damage bonus %, meaning that you don't have to miss out on 4-piece VV with Kazuha. And if you have Furina in the team, damage bonus central. Amazing and highly recommendable synergy, and you'll never miss the Hydro Crystallize if you play Nervi, Furina, Kazuha, Kachina, buffing the best DPS in the game. Thanks Hoyoverse, very cool. Arlecchino can use Kachina for her crystallized shields as well. There are some fights, such as the Copper Duo or any other stagger-heavy battle, where shielding and interruption res would be really appreciated for Arlecchino. Kachina can not only provide those shields, but she can make up for the loss of Kazuha's extremely powerful buffing with 4-piece Cinder City. The protection won't be as good as Zhongli, sure, but it definitely works. It's especially nice to use her in Mono Pyro Arlecchino, where triggering Pyro Crystallizes is super easy to do. Chiori can on-field DPS herself, and Kachina is actually a good partner for her since her little drill creature is a Geo construct. They can form a very strong double Geo core together, where you can either main DPS Chiori with 2 elemental DPSs stuck onto the back, or as 2 reliable sub-DPSs that can go into the back of any elemental DPS-driven team. Also, Chiori appreciates Kachina's def % buffing C4, and if you play Chiori with Bennett, there's some attack buffing for you. Best of both worlds with this dual scaling unit. Though, keep in mind that if your Bennett is C6, Chiori does indeed get our normals overridden with Pyro Infusion. Very disappointing, as a super few amount of infusion-based DPSs, nearly none, actually get overridden by Bennett C6. Alas, it is what it is. Clorinde and Aggravate in general can use Kachina for her damage bonus %, but I do want to point out that I still feel like Kazuha is a lot better in Aggravate because of how his burst can help apply more Electro, how he can help proc more Aggravates on the whole, and how much he contributes to Aggravate's damage output. For this reason, I prefer Kachina with Hypercarry Clorinde, who can also provide her of Geo Resonance by playing her alongside Yunjin in Clorinde's Hyper team. Raiden Hyper can also use Kachina with 4-piece Cinder City as a Kazuha or Chevre's replacement, and crystallizing Electro isn't that hard with Raiden's skill being active and constantly applying Electro. But you would much rather be using Chevre's over Kachina here. You're pretty much only using the Geo Kid with Raiden if you haven't got the other 2 available for her teams. Double Hydro teams can benefit from Kachina's damage bonus % too. Traditional Hu Tao Double Hydro has always been open to Geo Flex slots, and Kachina is no different. It's even nicer since because Furina isn't present as Xingqiu takes her spot on the traditional team, the Geo Kid's 40% damage bonus is a great increase to the team. Keep in mind that you're basically not going to be crystallizing Pyro. You can start with Tao's Burst and crystallize that, but then that's an unbuffed Tao Burst, and this technique simply isn't possible on Shimenawa's. So Kachina will pretty much exclusively be buffing your Hydro unit's damage, and Furry Tao Plunge Vape is definitely stronger than this team. Nevertheless, it is indeed an option. Klee can also work well with Kachina. This is because she has an easy way of applying her element without wasting her damage, being Klee's normal attacks because she's a catalyst. This makes it really easy for Kachina to crystallize Pyro to provide the Cinder City buff. It's also great for Klee Mono Pyro because you're buffing Xiangling's huge Pyro damage as well. But if you're playing Furina Klee Vape, Klee's best installed team, you can also opt to crystallize Furina's Hydro damage instead, by starting off your rotation with Furina to apply Hydro, and get an easy blue crystallize off. The point of this team is that Klee applies so much Pyro that Furina can vape her 3 little guys hits every time, so Klee is more of a Furina Vape driver in this team, if that makes sense. So this is a viable route to take as well. Do note that you lose Kazuha's grouping of Klee's bombs by using Kachina over Kazuha. Muolani can also work with Kachina well, for those of you who are interested. It is a fast rotation, and has plenty of 4-star teammates involved. She's free from the Archon quest, and is on Muolani's banner, so you can try it out for yourself. Great! Now we actually know the ins and outs of this YOB-blessed young girl. But how does Kachina actually work? Her normal attacks bust out some sick breakdancing moves, 4 in a row to be precise. Nothing much to add here, you won't be using these, but hey, at least they're cool to look at. As for Kachina's skill, it summons a Geo Construct while also providing the kid herself with 60 Night Soul points. You can press the skill to summon the construct, or hold the skill to ride the construct. Yes, the drill does count as a Geo Construct. The construct disappears once Kachina has used up all of her Night Soul points. If you don't ride the construct, then it, on its own, will slam the ground and deal Geo damage. If you ride it, you can press your normal attack inputs while riding to consume Night Soul points and do ground slam attacks which also deal Geo damage. The skill is also really nice for exploring mountains in Notlan, as you can ride up hills very easily with Turbo Twirly. I wanted to say it at least once. You can also reposition the construct if necessary, much like Fischl's Oz. and only one of Kachina's constructs can exist at a time, so resummoning it simply refreshes its cooldown. As for her burst, she strikes the ground and deals AoE geo damage, creating a big drill field. This field increases the construct's attack AoE and also its movement speed whenever you're riding on it. Pretty neat. If you have C2, then using her burst will also summon Kachina's construct right next to her and refresh its cooldown. As for Ascension passives, simple. Kachina's A1 gives herself 20% geo damage bonus for 12 seconds after someone in your team triggers a Night Soul Burst, something that happens when a character deals elemental damage when a Knotline character is in your team. This A1 is useless if you're using Kachina solely as a 4-piece Cinder City bot. Meanwhile, her A4 increases her construct's damage based on 20% of Kachina's defense. Once again, pretty useless if it's a pure buffing only Kachina that you're after. This is why I say that a non-DPS Kachina can stay at level 1, because her Ascension passives do literally nothing for her in terms of buffing the team. Good if you care about Kachina's damage, however. As for talent priorities, simple, go for this. You can leave all of her talents at level 1 if you're using her as a Cinder City bot, but this is more so for people who want to build her as a sub-DPS or DPS, in which case, all of her damage is skill-based, including Kachina's ground slams when you ride her construct, so focus on that first. Then you can aim for her burst, and as cool as her normals are, you're never going to be using them outside of a C6 Bena scenario in Itto teams in order to proc more consistent crystallizes, like I said earlier. Even then, it's not for their damage, so save your resources. Got lucky with multiple copies of her on the Mulan or Kazuha banners? Then let's talk constellations. This not only makes Kachina's already low ER requirements even less demanding, but furthers her positive case in Navia teams. Sucking in crystallized shards is such a win when it comes to playing with Navia. I cannot stop praising their synergy together. Her C2 gives her skill Geoconstruct near infinite uptime by resummoning it whenever she uses her burst. This C2 is honestly really worthwhile, even for a level 1 support only Kachina. These talent levels are nice for damaging Kachinas, but for a pure support build, ignore this. Sadly, a def increase. An attack increase would have furthered her case with Navia even more, but to be fair, she's great with her as is. Lovely C4 for Itto and Chiori players. My opinion on this C5 is the same as my opinion on her C3. This is good for Kachina's own geo damage, but as always, definitely not a necessity. Great for damage-based builds, however. C1 is an extremely nice bit of quality of life for all Navia mains, but you'll still have access to Kachina's insane synergy with her at C0, right out of the box, free from the start of the Archon quest. And C2 is really great for her Cinder City uptime. C4 is also well worth your time if you like playing Arataki Itto or Chiori. I'd stop at C2 if I were you, but C4 can be nice to get. No 5-star weapons needed for her, in my opinion. Kachina doesn't only feel like the Navia buffer that I've been waiting for all of this time, but also a really solid Geo unit in general. She has a comfortable way to slot into most of their teams, and she can do some really good work outside of Geo teams too, working with some really high-profile units such as Nervalette, Arlecchino, and to a much lesser extent, Chloriander. She's free to try, cheap to try, and is on the whole, very effective. Don't sleep on the free-to-play Navia team. I have whaled out units, and I personally still have so much fun with the free-to-play Navia team. Hopefully this video was able to get your Kachina drilling away the lives of her enemies. This has been Juice, signing out, and yeah, she mines rocks pretty well.